All right. Well, I think we're going to get started. First of all, thank you all for coming to this webinar on innovation in health tech. So for the next hour, we're going to discuss what co-creation in health tech really looks like. And this event is brought to you by Kickstart Innovation, Roche, and Growpal. I am Priyanka Sharma Wall, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Very excited to do that. I'm the health tech lead at Kickstart Innovation. Kickstart Innovation is an open innovation platform, and we accelerate commercial partnerships between scale-ups and leading corporates and institutions here in Switzerland. Kickstart operates across 5 industry verticals, including an entrepreneurship track, and we also recently launched a circular economy initiative that we're very excited about. But most importantly, we're committed to pushing an open innovation culture. Kickstart is thrilled to have Roche as one of our health tech corporate partners this year. And we're excited to have 2 brilliant minds from Roche joining us today, Anne Niche and Martin Grossman. Roche has been committed to improving lives since the company was founded in 1896 in Basel, Switzerland. Today, Roche creates innovative medicines and diagnostic tests that help millions of patients globally and focuses on oncology, immunology, neuroscience, amongst other things. Roche is committed to exploring the field of rare diseases by growing deep partnerships and collaboration in and out of the industry. Growpal is also a program partner this year, and the founder of Growpal, Nico Bakaridis, is here with us and will say a few words before we get started. Over to you, Nico. Nico, we don't hear you. You are on mute.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Priyanka. I'm happy to be part of this initiative and this partnership. The role of Growpal in this initiative was, first of all, to help identify the patient needs for these specific rare condition patients. And then, based on these very needs, building an ecosystem of startups and partners that can help address these patient needs and eventually improving the whole patient journey. This is very much aligned with what we do at Growpal, which is create these win-win situations between startups and pharma companies and enable this co-creation. And I have to say, what I particularly like about this initiative is that the patient needs are really center and front of it, which gives it a lot of purpose and a lot of meaning. So excited to be a part of it. And with that, back to you, Priyanka, and wishing you a great webinar.
Thank you, Nico. So before we get started, like every webinar, a couple housekeeping details. So this webinar will be recorded and shared with all participants. The audience will have a chance to ask questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A. Participants will all be muted, so unfortunately we won't be able to do it by voice, but please put your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. And then, of course, over to the most important piece here is, who are you going to hear from? So we're very excited to have 3 captivating speakers with us today. We have Anne Niche, Rare Conditions Transformation Leader at Roche. Anne is going to speak to us about cultural transformation and the infinity model at Roche and what's driving innovation in healthcare. Martin Grossman, the Commercial Director of Neuromuscular Disease, will join us, and he will speak about launching a product to solve patient needs and why partnerships matter. And then we have Hermine van Jaren, the CEO at Braive, who is going to speak to us about scaling Braive, a successful mental health startup, and also Kickstart alumni company. So after these 3 lightning talks, we will have a fun discussion between Martin, Anne, and Hermine. And then, of course, we'll open up the floor to the audience for questions. So without further ado, I would love to invite Anne. Anne, thank you so much for joining us. I would like to start by asking you, Anne, how can leaders show up to drive innovation in healthcare?
Okay, so first of all, thanks Priyanka for such a lovely introduction, and I'm really thrilled to be here today. I think it's an incredible, exciting start of a wonderful journey. Now, on your question, I was reflecting about it over the weekend, and I think that there is even a broader question around that, which is how can leaders really show up to drive innovation to core? And you know, I was reading and I was stumbling at a quote of Stephen Johnson, and I didn't know him at all. But Stephen Johnson seems to be a very famous American author, as well as the producer of a kind of a show that is called How We Got to Now. But so what he's saying, and that's really important, is the following. He says, if you look at history, innovation doesn't come just from giving people incentives. It comes from creating environments where their ideas can connect. And it was so much resonating for me because that's actually exactly what we are doing here. So that really made totally sense for me. So before I'm translating that to healthcare, let me just give a couple of examples on how other industries are doing that. And let's take the core industry. You don't buy a core, you are buying a solution for your mobility question. You might want to drive your kids to school, or you might want to joyride in the weekend, but that's what you're trying to solve for. Take the travel industry. They are not selling a bed or a hotel or a flight, but they are selling an experience. And you might want to have a very relaxing experience, or you might want to have the biggest kind of adventure in your life. But so the point I want to make is that what these industries are really, really doing is that they put the need of the customer at the center of everything what they are doing. And by that, they innovate. So let's go to health. WHO is defining health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And that definition came for me so alive when I was talking with people with a rare condition. Because what they all said was, hey, don't label me as a patient. I'm a person like you. I'm just born with a rare condition. And I want to live my life like you, because I have the same dreams and the same aspirations like you and everyone else. But so, having said that, what we can observe in the overall healthcare system is that there is a tremendous shift in how we look at healthcare. So, and what becomes important related to that is the overall value that we can bring to patients. And that's so important. The value we can bring to patients, to healthcare professionals, as well as to the healthcare systems while we are engaging with all those people and within those systems. So it's all about holistic care. And you all know that very well. I mean, as pharma companies, we are so skilled in developing wonderful treatments for patients and bringing them to market. And it's our strength, it's our core strength, and we have a tremendous skill in that. And that's how it should be, because that's from where the revenue is coming historically, today, and in the future. Because ultimately, that's also the profits we are reinvesting to do research, to find new products. But at the same time, while we are doing that, we have been looking always from the inside. And we didn't always fully understand what people with a rare condition need to transform their lives, or what healthcare systems really need to enable that for those patients. So intrinsically with all of that, if you reflect about that, comes that notion that if you want to help to bring out that value, that holistic value, you simply can't do that alone. You can't, because you don't have that know-how. So where it really starts is with a tremendous and sincerely listening to what is going on with those patients in those healthcare systems, to be very transparent about it, and then to collaborate really with everyone out there who can evolve those healthcare systems and the life of those patients. And so partnership and co-creation is really, really at the core of all of that. So my personal belief as a leader is that it's so important to nurture the behavior, but also the mindset where each and every colleague can really unleash their potential by experimenting through collaboration. And doing that while always keeping that North Star in the front of them, which is bringing more value to people that are living with a rare condition faster. And you know, that's what this partnership with Kickstart and with Growpal is all about.
Super. Thank you, Anne. That's really inspiring. And to piggyback off of that, can I ask you, how do you inspire this culture of purpose and patient centricity within your teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as you have observed, we are all incredibly passionate about what we are doing, and you'll hear that also from Martin. And that is because we are all driven by our purpose, or that North Star, which is so profoundly there, which is around, and I cannot repeat it enough, bringing more value to people with rare conditions faster to transform their lives. And in a certain way, that has become our compass and our guiding principle in everything that we are doing day in or day out. And so one of the outcomes that we are having for this year is that we really want to build very strong and seamless partnerships between internal and external networks and ecosystems, so that we can co-create solutions while we leverage basically innovation experiments to reach that purpose. But what you might not know is that each member of our team has been handpicked for that passion, for that purpose. And I'm really a strong believer that when people really believe in something and can rally around a purpose, not only can they show up as being truly authentic, but they are also able to give the best of themselves each day. Each day they will truly give the best of themselves. And I can even go a step further, because many of us working in this space, they even have a personal experience with a rare condition, including myself. And it makes you really understand what the impact is of having a rare condition on the person who's having it, but as well on the life of the loved ones and the family and the caregivers around. So on your question, what I'm really encouraging my team always to do is to lean in and to really listen to patients, to the communities, and to the broader ecosystem. Because when you truly do that, you are going to understand what is going to bring value to them. And while doing that, we are always pushing ourselves to think bigger and to approach all that as well with a lot of curiosity, because we sincerely believe that that's a strong base to learn, but also to evolve. And you know, when I'm reflecting back, because we are operating now in this new approach for the last 8 to 9 months, we have all embraced that kind of fabulous notion of experimentation. And what we are observing now, and I'm so proud about that, is that it has created a lot of momentum within the broader organization, so within Roche, and it starts even to be picked up by the external world. So that is fabulous. So I'm really proud, and I'm even more excited to be part of this journey. And I look forward in how this partnership can even bring more value to patients faster.
Super. Congratulations on all of the work you are doing, Anne, and your teams.
Thank
you
you
so much. If you have questions for Anne, please do put them in the Q&A. And now I'd like to welcome Martin Grossman. Martin, thank you for joining us today. I will jump in with my first question. How do partnerships help support patients?
Great, thanks for that, Priyanka. And then, of course, so first of all, a thank you. Really to you, to the organizers of this webinar for enabling and fostering the discussion that we're going to have today. I definitely do not have enough opportunity to engage with entrepreneurs, to engage with innovators. And so for me, I'm really looking forward to the dialogue over the course of this session. Happy to share a few thoughts up front, but I think I'll learn just as much as the panelists in today's call. So thanks again for fostering this discussion and for inviting me to share just a few thoughts. So how do partnerships help patients? I thought a lot about this. In fact, I'm going to overlap a little bit with some of the things that Anne said, which I think, coming from the same company and both of us working in the rare disease space, I think that's a great thing when we echo one another's thoughts. So, first of all, we're really focused on bringing meaningful advances to patients with rare diseases, bringing these advances to them faster. And so I think we're great as a company historically and as an industry at delivering meaningful therapies and getting it to as many patients as possible. We're getting a bit better at doing things beyond just the therapies. But this is where we have a long way to go. One example is we're doing a lot today on digital health technology tools, and we're making some modest advances, I think, relative to the rest of the industry, but we're really just at the infancy. The things where we're missing, where we have a gap, is on innovation and tools beyond the drugs. And so if we can have and develop and identify great innovations that will fit the needs of our patients and help startups, help innovators, help entrepreneurs to advance their technologies and bring them to patients, we would love to. And so there are things that we're focused on, and those things are really just what the end user needs. And again, this echoes again what Anne said. What does the end user, be it a patient or a caregiver, again, because it's not just about the patient, it's about the people and the ecosystem around them. How do we enable the best possible support? And so for example, I work in neuromuscular diseases. These are diseases where your central nervous system ultimately impacts your muscular function. And that's as simple a way to describe it as possible. And so what that clearly means is there are needs like physiotherapy needs, mobility needs, just stabilizing your body, and then traditional things that are across many diseases, like how to manage school, how to manage work. So these are the things that we're focused on. How do we improve outcomes for our patients, for their caregivers, and the stakeholders around them?
Super, thank you. Well, that was actually going to be my next question for you, which you started already answering, which is super, which is what are the ways in which Roche and especially your team are helping to transform the lives of patients with rare diseases? And if you could give some examples.
Yeah, I think my previous answer only scratches the surface there. So no, there's still more juice in that lemon. So first of all, this is about becoming part of a community. Rare diseases, especially, you have a small group of people, but they're often highly interconnected. Their relationships are really strong, and we're not creating a community, we're entering a community. And so that means we have to enter it in a way that builds trust. That's really the first thing that's most important to us. So this is about how do we show up. And Anne and her team have designed an amazing approach to just how we show up directly with the customers, so in the field with customers. And this is more about learning than telling. I spoke a little bit about learning at the beginning of this, but this isn't about, you know, telling people about our products, but we just have to understand the community, and that's the way that we develop trust. It includes listening to this small community, and just over time, and as we advance our understanding, becoming a credible partner. And some of the other things that we're doing, you asked about how we really help patients' needs. We're also not just looking in the traditional markets. Historically, I would say pharma, unfortunately, focuses on advanced markets. This means Europe, Japan, US. But patients don't suffer from rare diseases or any diseases just in those countries. And so we're really focused on getting out to a much broader set of markets. It's super important for us in helping to transform lives, that we just don't focus on a small handful of the well-to-do, but really focus on emerging markets as well. For example, in our area where Anne and I operate, we're looking to get to at least twice the number of countries that the other therapies are focused on in the same space. So other things that we do to transform their lives, I guess I think of this more in two different ways. One is intangible things that we can do to help transform people's lives, and more tangible things. And the intangible things are, for example, just giving hope. We have a really nice program which has been started in the US, which highlights people with rare, the rare diseases that we focus on, and how they just get by in life, how they live as normal a life as possible. And that gives hope, it gives inspiration, it lets people know that they're not alone. And so there are intangible things like that that sound a bit soft, but are super meaningful to patients and caregivers, just to know that there are people out there who are like them, and they're not just surviving life, they're thriving in life. Then there are lots of other just tangible things that we all love to do, that you kind of create something that didn't exist before, and you have examples where we connect innovators and scientists in different countries to educate one another on best practices, even on creating physical devices that will help people with neuromuscular diseases. Numerous other things, rare diseases, often they're underdiagnosed. We work on improving diagnosis. I talked a little bit earlier about digital health tools that we're working on, and then just staying close to the key stakeholders. That means not just coming up with an idea ourselves, but we do it in co-creation with the key stakeholders, for example, patient groups who we're very close with. So those are just some of the ways that we're focused on transforming the lives of patients and the people around them.
Thank you so much, Martin. I love this thread of hope, this idea of hope. It's also just, yeah, I'm very touched by that. Thanks. And if you have questions from Martin, I'm sure everyone does, again, please pop them in the Q&A, and then we'll get to them. And now I would like to introduce Hermine. Hermine?
I think she's on mute, so you may have to unmute her.
There you are.
Here.
Super. Hermine, I'm going to share my screen. Hermine has a presentation to share with us. So please let me know once you see the screen, and definitely tell me when to hit next.
Okay, thank you very much. And also I'd like to say thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very honored to be in this eminent company, and I will do my best to bring the startup perspective to the dialogue. Yes, I'm here to represent Braive. We were a part of the Kickstart program last year. We're an alumni from that program, and we had a really great experience. We got to meet the decision makers in a lot of big companies that we would normally not have access to. And we've had partnerships with Migro, that was one of the partners, and also Sanitas, ongoing since we completed the program in November. So that's very exciting. Yes, so I'm introducing Braive. We're an ICBT platform. ICBT is scalable mental health treatment. And it's basically internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy that a user can access by themselves or in combination with a therapist. It's not entirely new. In fact, there's actually been 20 years of research on ICBT and the efficacy of ICBT, especially in actually Sweden, where I'm from, and Australia. 75 to 80% of users have proven to get better and stay better. And we can also see that it's definitely more time effective than traditional face-to-face therapy. So to introduce Braive, if you want to skip to the next slide, thank you. We call ourselves the new generation of effective care because little happened in the first 19 years of ICBT, and there was mainly a lot of research, and since we've hit the market, we've tried to innovate this space. The foundation of our platform are the step-by-step programs where the users are getting psychoeducation via animated videos. They take interactive activities, they listen to audio tracks, and so on throughout the program. They're supported by a mobile app where they can monitor and record their progress. They can also be supported by a clinician, and everything can get reported in an aggregated level back to, for example, a pharmaceutical company that is interested to understand their patient journey. I'll just go quiet, and that means next slide. So the user journey at Braive is basically the first step. You take what we call a mental health check. It's a battery of psychometric tests that, based on an algorithm, will decide what questions are posed to you. When you've answered the questions, we have been able to map your symptoms, the severity levels of your symptoms, and also your life situation. And based on that, we can tailor-make a program specifically for you. The program will usually take somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks to complete, depending on what program is recommended. And the majority of our programs are within symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, and sleep deprivation. We also have other types of programs for people that are high functioning, but that want to perform even better, that are more in the mental training space. Something that, for example, athletes would take part in. At the end of the program, we've basically been able to collect data from our users. Nothing, obviously, that can be tied to the person, but it's completely anonymous, and on an aggregated level, we can then look at the outcome of our patients. So what are the most common symptoms, what are the severity levels, and how is the progress throughout the program. The user flow there are mainly three user flows. So the first step is always to take the mental health check, and based on that, get a recommended treatment plan. Then there are three ways to go. You can either do this entirely self-administered, so you are on your own in the platform for the entirety of the program. However, when I say you're completely on your own, that's not completely true, because you are there with other users taking the program, and there are comment sections tied to every activity where you can basically comment and have discussions with other users. The second step is that the second step is that you are guided by a clinician. This can either be just via chat, and the clinician can see all the homework activities and your recordings, your journal entries, the tests that you're taking on a regular basis in the program, and give you feedback based on that on a weekly basis, but also answer questions as they come. The third way is what we call blended care. That's when you might be seeing a physician, a clinician of any kind, for one diagnosis, but you are taking the Braive program on the side. So for example, you might be taking a CBT program for sleep deprivation, but you're seeing a physician for another condition that is causing the sleep deprivation, for example. So those are the three main flows. just a little bit about our team. There's 22 of us currently at Braive, so we're a small team. We are divided over 5 main areas. We have the research and program development group. Those are all mainly all clinicians or actual specialists in that group. We have, of course, our tech team. Operations is basically me and the CFO and some assistants with bookkeeping and so on. Then we have our sales and business development team. And then finally, we have our healthcare provider team, which are ensuring the quality of the healthcare that we provide. I'm not counting our clinicians, the psychologists that work for Braive, as they are not a part of the team. As such, they have their own practices, and then they, on their spare time, or depending on what our relationship looks like, they are looking after our patients as well. And then finally, what can Braive and, for example, a pharmaceutical company accomplish together? So one example would be that if we make Braive's ICBT treatment programs available to patients starting psychotropic medication as part of their treatment, we can assist on the side. So for example, we can provide doctors prescribing psychotropic medication the opportunity to prescribe suited ICBT treatment and the ability for them to monitor the progress of their patients as they are being treated.
Super. Thank you so much, Hermine, for walking us through that and for sharing the work that you're doing in the mental health space. And now over to the part I'm the most excited about is the next 10 minutes or so to see Anne, Martin, Hermine, if you might have some questions for one another. And I would like to invite you to take the floor and to have a chat. We'd like to listen in though.
Okay, well, perhaps I can start if that's all right. So I'm wondering, for a company like Roche, what do you see would be the benefit of working with a startup?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stance on that. Before I do that, Hermine, I want to congratulate you, because what you were showing, it's mind-blowing. And it's a skill set that we are definitely not having. So it's again illustrating why this partnership is going to be so fruitful. And what I liked as well was your integration of data going forward, because that is truly the future. So yeah, truly congratulations from my side.
Thank you.
I think the benefit that Roche can bring for a startup, it's obviously the scale. If you think it through, we have a global footprint. So whatever kind of innovative solution that gets developed can immediately be translated into a global marketplace. You know, historically, we want to test things, right? But if we really are innovative, we can go immediately global with a solution and see how the customers are responding to it. And we are able to do that because we have that kind of broad network of people that we are engaging with. So I think that would be one benefit that I'm thinking about. The other benefit is, well, we do have a tremendous capability in bringing medical innovation to the market. So, and there are definitely certain learnings that we can transfer if there is a more healthcare related innovation that needs to be brought to the market, where we can bring in those learnings from how we are doing that with our medical innovation. So Martin, do you want to add on that?
First of all, to echo the congratulations, a really nice overview of your organization. And yeah, I'm sure you didn't even scratch the surface as well on all of the things that you all have accomplished so far. So really very impressive and very cool technology. So yeah, what are the things that Roche can bring to patients? What is the benefit really of working together with Roche? Yes, like Anne said, we're a global organization, so we can take something and bring it from one country or one region to hundreds of countries and many regions throughout the world. I would say relative to other organizations, we're very patient focused. Hopefully you've gotten that sense from Anne and myself. We're very open-minded, and we think of things holistically, right? This is not just about selling a product, for example, a pharmaceutical product. We think holistically about how can we rise all boats? How do we help the entire community? And we're certain that if we do that and do that well, in the end, it will help us, but in the short run, and most importantly, it helps patients. And so linked to that, the other thing, benefit of working with a company like Roche and other companies like Roche is just, we're also just a very ethically oriented organization. The decisions that I see and experience on a day-to-day basis are around how to be as ethical as possible, how to do the right thing, how to do what's in the best interest of patients impresses me. It's a really, it's something which, is different from some other organizations that I've worked with in the past. And so that's another angle I think worth bringing out, is that in partnership, we can do things globally, we can do things for patients, and we can simply just do the right thing.
Yeah, and maybe I can build on one additional thing that I truly believe Roche can bring. So we are a large organization, but at the same time, when we are developing medicines, we very often do that in very close collaboration with startups and with small biotechs. So we have a very strong legacy in doing that. And what was amazing for me when I entered Roche was to observe that Roche is respecting the authenticity of that entity and let that entity flourish, and through that spark that innovation. And that for me, and I've worked in a couple of companies like Martin, it was the first time that I saw that. So it's really kind of a nice kind of approach that is also transferable to what we are going to do here. Because innovation, if you start to integrate everything, you're losing the spark, and it's important that you keep that, and that you respect the innovative character of the team or the group or the company that is bringing that innovation. So I think that's another benefit. Maybe a question to you, or Martin, do you want to?
Go for it, please.
I'm wondering if I'm turning it around, what would be for you important on that? What is the must-have list if you would select a large company to help you to operationalize an innovative solution?
I mean, to be honest, everything that you and Martin just said is music to any startup's ears. It really is. And I think it's important to understand that the biggest challenge for any startup is resources. There's always talk about lean and agile, but the resources, and especially manpower, it's what we don't have. So it's very important that there is not, that there's an understanding of that. And then Martin, you touched on this, because the challenge of running an innovation company is that there is no clear path to the end user. We don't exactly know what the road to the market will look like, because it's an innovation company, so it's new. And the only way that we can really find this out is not spending months and months and heaps of money on consulting companies doing market analysis. The way that we can find this out is through trial and error. And if a big company like Roche is able to provide that network and to be able to put the product out there to be tested, then that is immensely valuable. And it's something that, obviously we would never have that reach on our own as a startup to do that. So that would be invaluable. So that would be the number one, if I can pick one.
Thank you.
And just to maybe give an example associated with that, if you don't mind, because I think real stories make a difference and they hit home. I can just paint a picture how over the past maybe 3 or 4 weeks, our German affiliate, very large part of the organization, identified a digital physiotherapy tool, for example, that they think can help patients with rare neuromuscular diseases. And all they were talking about was, how do we cut the red tape? How do we find a way to do a project together with this organization and move forward, even though it is just a small startup. So things like that make me really pleased, and talk to the comments, Herman, you just made.
I can give another example if it's of interest. We developed a program during these trying times. The reason we're meeting on Zoom, we developed a program for people during COVID-19 and the anxiety and worry that comes with that, but also the isolation and perhaps the stress of working from home with kids at home and so on. And we made it entirely for free, but we couldn't get it out there. I mean, we posted it on our website and so on, and we communicated it in our channels, but we got a very small reach. And then we got an insurance company that believed in us and trusted us as a company to do a mail send out. And within 2 days, we had 8,000 people enrolled in that program.
Wow.
I mean, that's something that we could have never achieved on our own.
That's fascinating, really.
Yes, it speaks about the muscle that we do not have. So then, I mean, obviously, I asked you previously about what are the benefits, but it's also interesting to understand a little bit more about the challenges, because of course there's a reason why not everyone is working with startups. I'm understanding that there must of course be some challenges for pharma in your case to work with innovation companies such as startups.
Maybe I give it a start, Anne, and then hand over to you. How does that sound?
Go ahead.
Okay, so from my end, so what are the barriers? What gets in the way of us working with startups? And I think that there are things that get in the way, clearly, otherwise it would happen a lot more. I mean, a first one is obvious, just awareness, right? There are many startups, and we simply don't know. I mean, you spoke about it, right? Getting the reach to get to 8,000 patients took a larger organization that allowed you to create awareness. So, I mean, a very basic one is just awareness. How do you then find the right person in the organization to get to let them know about your tool? Sounds straightforward, but indeed, in the end, it's much more complex. The other one is more subtle. The other challenge to me is just is the cost to experimentation, is the way I think about it. And I think there is truly a cost to experimentation. Many people may not want to talk about it, but there's a cost. If I experiment with you and it goes wrong, there's a reputational impact to me. There's potentially a reputational impact to the company. And then there's the opportunity cost that I've then invested time in something where that I could have spent on something else. So I think that's a reality. How exactly we overcome this cost to experimentation, I don't think I have all of the answers. All I can say is just one really nice example from Roche is it comes from the top down, that there is permission to experiment and try new things, and there's permission to fail. We should fail fast when we fail and not spend months and months and months failing, but there's openness and support for failing from the top down, and that really helps people lose some of their fear of reputational impact.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Anne, please go ahead, because I was going to say after Anne's remark, we're going to move to questions from the audience, but this is perfect. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, just building on what Martin is saying, and it's resonating so much to me. Besides that awareness, in all honesty, I think in big corporations, there was at least in the past also that kind of ego thinking about we can solve everything inside because we know everything. And I think it's only recent that we see a shift in that thinking of, hey, we don't know everything. Or outside, there are people with a lot of know-how that can do things faster. So that's a shift in thinking that is happening. I think the other element, and that is well typical for large corporations, is we are big, so we are complex. And sometimes we tend to over-engineer things because many people are getting involved in what we are trying to accomplish. And that over-engineering is slowing us down, ultimately, in doing what we want to do towards the patients. And that is something as well, like Morten alluded, it has created much more openness to experiment, because there is truly that notion, if you want to learn as an organization, and if you want to become truly customer-centric, you need to experiment and you need to fail. Because if you don't experiment and if you don't fail, it means that you're not pushing yourself far enough and that you're playing it always safe. So we actually need to get a little bit of that spirit of a startup within the way how we are thinking. So what my ask would be to all the startups that are joining this partnership is truly give us feedback all the time along the journey, because it's only throughout that feedback that we are going to be able to learn and to evolve, and that we can merge the great of both worlds so that patients can benefit ultimately of that. So back to you, Priyanka.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to hear so much openness and empathy in the process. But really, thank you, Anne, Martin, and Hermine. It was cool to be a fly on the wall in your conversation. I wish we could go on, but in the interest of time, we can't. But now the floor is for the audience, and we've got a lot of questions. I'm going to answer them in the order I see them. If I see your name, I'll also read it out loud. The first question is directly for Anne, from Khalid Hafez. How do you see, Anne, the infinity model helping rare condition patients different from a traditional way of working?
Okay, great question. Thanks for that. And I think it goes back a little bit in how do you measure the value that comes out of it? Because ultimately, if the patients and the people in the healthcare system don't see the difference, why do you do it, right? And the other is, if we cannot demonstrate that it is as well an approach where we can drive financial success, why do you do it then? Because those two elements are really key there. And you know, I'm always thinking about what Peter Drucker is saying. He is saying, if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. And I think it's even more true in a period of transformation. So in terms of answering the question directly, we will continue to measure how many patients are benefiting from the drug, so the treatment or the diagnostic that we are offering. And it's very simple, because that is where our revenue stream is going to come from, in the past and in the future, so that we can reinvest in finding wonderful treatments for patients. Yet, what we also at the same time want to measure is how those patients and those people in the healthcare system are responding to us, and whether they truly see value. And the way how we want to measure that is through a couple of approaches. One, we want to see whether the patients are really seeing that their quality of life is improved, whether they really perceive it, and we want to ask them directly. The second element that we want to measure is, do we really impact positively the healthcare systems? Are we making a difference? Are we creating more access? Are we helping to shape a better environment where patients can live a healthier life? And the third question we are going to ask to those customers is, do they feel a difference in how we are interacting in that new approach? So in other words, are we listening better? Are we faster in answering when they are having a question, that we are giving a clear-cut answer on that? So there is a lot of disruption in the way how we want to position ourselves. So yes, absolutely, we continue to measure the hard financial metrics, which is a translation of the number of treatments that patients are on. But at the same time, we are going to be extremely self-critical that we want to see whether that partnership is truly seen as bringing value to the patients, to the people in the community, and into the healthcare system. So it's an end, but it's quite disruptive. And yeah, we will have to measure and then see whether indeed that value is coming out.
Thank you, Erin. I see questions that are coming up, and some are directed to specific people. Maybe Hedmeen, this one is to you. Did you build these tools with co-creation and some users, i.e. caregivers, to test it?
Yes, it's true. We had a collaboration with a hospital, and we also had a collaboration with an insurance company. So 1 year before the official launch, we started working with them in order to both understand the end user requirements. So not only the end user as the person who will use the tool, but the end user in terms of the customer, which would then be hospitals and yeah, in that case, insurance companies. So we were able to have the benefit of getting that feedback directly.
Great. The next, short but sweet. No, it's very clear. The next question from Zazov, I think maybe Martin, I think this would be a great one for you, but how can you contribute to reducing the final price to end users or patients, or what are your thoughts around the price that patients have to pay?
Sorry, you mean the price of pharmaceuticals? Is that the question?
The question is quite open, but the goal is, are there ways that you've seen that there is the end user, their out-of-pocket expenditure is also going to be lowered based on the solutions you're finding? Yeah.
Well, this is a huge question for how much time do I have to get into this? This is such a complex one. It's such an important question. I spoke earlier about access, and that's really important to us. That's in the end, I think, the essence of what's behind this. How do we make sure that we have access as broadly as possible? For sure, on the one hand, we need to make sure we're communicating the value of our therapies that they truly have, because without doing that, and without also really explaining the tremendous costs of developing new therapies, which are all kind of some of the elements that go into the pricing, right? Is the value of the therapy. It's also then the costs of building and developing a pipeline of new future therapies. So there's one side of the equation is simply just making sure the value is clear, and it's clear from the data and the benefits of the therapies. The other one is then, how do we make sure that we get access in as many countries as possible? And I spoke about that earlier, that we've come up, and there's quite a lot of risk to doing that, which is why a lot of pharmaceutical companies haven't done that, because there's risk to them in their other markets. So we've come up with just an innovative pricing platform, which I just don't have the time to get into here, on providing access to this very broad range of countries. And then on a country by country basis, to getting to the specific question, on a country by country basis, we do a lot to make sure that we're minimizing the costs to patients from out of pocket. And there are a range of tools and programs that we can offer to make sure that patients get access, and that out of pocket costs are minimized or kept within appropriate levels. But again, this question could require, we
need a follow-up, Martin, for this question.
Yeah, maybe I can give a small additional build on that, which Martin so nicely articulated. While our people are now engaging much earlier and much more holistically in that healthcare system, they start early on to collaborate with all those different stakeholders in that healthcare system, which allows them to develop much more tailor-based solutions that can be at the micro level or at the regional level or at the country level, but it is more something that is shaped more and more along the journey together. where in the past it was, this is the system and here are we, and we push what we have into sometimes a broken system or a system that is more or less functional, but it were two different worlds, where now what we start to do is collaborate and partner and see how we can shape together that environment. So because ultimately we both have the same goal, which is that benefit, that patients can benefit from innovation that can really help them.
Great.
And sorry to add on just a super fast real world example is we're working so closely with the patient advocacy group in one of the rare diseases that we work in. And we're already having, you know, well in advance of the future launch, discussions around pricing and access, and they're giving us honest feedback. And we're engaging in a real dialogue. And so it's truly that co-creation, that engagement is helping us as well, beyond the other things I mentioned, to enable access to patients and to make sure that the drugs are as affordable as possible.
Super. We have time for maybe one more question, and then we have so many different questions that we didn't get to answer, and I'm sorry about that. I will share this with Anne Martin and Hermine afterwards, so that at least you know it's being thought of. This question is again a broad one. What is the key driver for transformation in a highly regulated field? The question here is, who do you have to convince for change in a corporate? I guess this is an Anne Martin question.
It's a beautiful question. So thanks to the person who voiced it. You know, the answer for me is very simple: yourself. You need to convince yourself. It has nothing to do whether it's regulated or not. Transformation comes from within. Because what we often see, 70–80% of transformations is failing, because people are looking at structures, people are looking at other people to drive the transformation, but it's all about starting to drive the change from within. And I'm a strong believer that if people have that purpose, and that common purpose, so I'm going back to the importance of having a purpose in what you want to achieve, then you can change mountains, you can move mountains, and that is so powerful. Martin and I have seen that there are numerous examples where people who are engaging with the customers suddenly find opportunities, and they really grasp them and they materialize them, that we sometimes have tears in our eyes because we are so overwhelmed that this is feasible. So for me, it starts with yourself, with the me, and important is that it's all relating to a very, very clear purpose where people are passionate about.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, we have so many questions. Hermine, in the last moment, we had so many that came in for you as well about planned pipeline of innovative solutions. Was it useful to build Braive out here in Zurich at Kickstart? But as I mentioned, I will share these questions with you. Maybe we'll answer them over social media. Who knows? But I would like to close. I am going to share my screen very quickly. And of course, say, ooh, look at that. There we are. No, but I wanted to say a very, very big thank you to our speakers who have taken the time, and Anne for sharing how important culture is, and empathy, and ooh, look at my screen. Sorry about that. Just a moment, please. Hola. Okay. Well, no, I'm going to leave it right there. So no, Anne, thank you so much for sharing about, you know, how you handpick each teammate and really look at the transformation process. To Martin, for sharing the tangibles and the intangibles. It's so cool to hear stories of hope, and also how you build trust in communities. That's really great. And Hermine, you know, we're so proud of the work Braive is doing. We really are. And to bring the startup perspective to prove that collaborations between startups and established corporations, these can be win-win-win, especially for patients at the end. So that's just great. I also wanted to say a big thank you to our very engaged audience. We didn't get to answer all your questions, but thank you so much for sending them in. And also a huge thanks to Lika Guy from Roche, to Nico Bakaridis from Growpal, as well as Zatina Paneva-Abud and Sasha Steinman from Kickstart. Today would not have been possible without all these folks. And of course, the startups in the audience who are interested in partnering with Roche, it's not too late. You have the chance to apply for the Kickstart program until June 8th. If you have any questions, my email is here. Please feel free to shoot me an email. And thank you so much to everyone, and wish you a wonderful evening. We will share the recording with everyone who attended. And then, of course, feel free to share it. Thank you so much.